Hi Year 12, in this video I'm going to go over a quick revision of Byron by Winter by Robert Gray. So in this video I'm going to go over the key context, the ideas that are explored within the poem, and then some analysis. So the context that I think is important when we're analysing Gray, there are two things and they're very interconnected. The first is that Gray is inspired by or influenced by romantic values. So Gray is not, he's not a romantic poet in the sense that he wasn't alive during the Romantic period, but he is influenced by the values of Romanticism, which turned away from industrialization and sought solace or restoration or spiritual experiences within the beauty of nature. So that is definitely something that Gray responds to, and his poetry is trying to extend romantic values into a 21st century Australian context. And the other thing is that Gray is definitely significantly influenced by Eastern spirituality. So he cites Alan Watts, a British philosopher who introduced the Western world to the ideas of Buddhism and Taoism as a significant experience. And so in all of Gray's poetry, you see him exploring the ideas that are found within Eastern spirituality, particularly Buddhism and Taoism, in his poems. So his poems are an exploration of spiritual or religious themes. So both of those contextual factors are significant influences on Gray, particularly the way that he writes about the natural world as a place of solace and spiritual nourishment away from modernity. So we'll see how those ideas manifest in the actual poem itself. Here are three key ideas that I latch onto when I look at this poem. There are more than three ideas within the poem, but these are the ones that just jump out to me. So the first is that immersion within the natural world's beauty can be peaceful and restorative. The narrator of this poem is walking along a beach, and that's something that I'm sure we've all done, and we can attest to the fact that it's a meditative experience, it's a relaxing experience, and that's exactly the kind of experience that Gray is exploring in this poem. It's peaceful and restorative. That links into the next idea that the grandeur of nature dwarfs the insignificance of the man-made world. So nature has this significance. It is grand and enormous and infinite and beautiful, extraordinary. And that's in contrast to the man-made world, modernity, which is kind of insignificant in comparison. In our modern lives, we tend to get that around the other way. We think of our man-made world and our the busyness of everyday life is the most important thing to us, and we forget about the natural world. But Gray is trying to tip the balance the other way and make us put things into perspective, to appreciate the enormity of the world, the natural world, and our insignificance in it. And then thirdly, the idea that immersion within nature provides individuals with opportunities for spiritual nourishment. This is an idea that's consistently explored throughout Gray's poems, as are a lot of these ideas. But again, this is something that is definitely an influence, or is influenced by those romantic values and the Buddhist kind of spiritual tenets, that nature is an important aspect in finding a kind of spiritual enlightenment. Okay, so the first thing, or the first idea that we'll look at, is this idea that immersion within the natural world, within its beauty, can be peaceful and restorative. So the form of the poem, it's always important, I think, to talk about the poetry's form, that is its structure, what it looks like. Gray has written about, his decisions with form here. He says that the full rhyme and half rhyme creates a musicality that makes the poem feel fresh and light. So the idea of nature being a kind of relief, or a soothing feature, is something that comes up in the form of the poem. Gray's ideas are always reflected in his language and his form. So here he points out that he uses full rhyme and half rhyme. So full rhyme, you've got examples like arc and mark, or train and stain. They're full, complete rhymes. And then we've got half rhymes, for instance, like foliage and carriage, or warmth and earth. Those are half rhymes. So he says that it, creates this musicality. And think about that, it's a deliberate decision that's in contrast to, say, for instance, something like Journey to the North Coast, which doesn't have any rhyme really. I'm trying to think, but it doesn't have rhyme because it's more focused on creating that sense of movement and momentum. This one, Gray, is more interested in making something sound pretty or musical, fresh and light. So he uses that full rhyme and half rhyme scheme to do that. But another way that we see the natural world's beauty is simply in the fact that Gray uses a lot of images of the natural world. So we've got this accumulation of images, the beach, blue ranges, swamp oaks foliage, the heath, cloudy afternoon, and all of these images create this vivid portrait of a winter's day in Byron Bay. This is a setting of great natural beauty. It's a place of solitude. So the persona uses the walk along the beach to meditate by immersing themselves in nature. And so we as well, we're immersed within nature. That's the experience that Gray is providing through this poem, is we too as readers get to be immersed within nature like the narrator, and hopefully find it to be a peaceful, soothing, restorative experience. So the next idea that I talked about, or that I signaled at the beginning of the video, was the idea that the natural world has a grandeur, has a monumental scale, and the man-made world is insignificant in comparison. So we've got this contrasting sense of scale. So the natural world is immediately established as being grand in the opening lines, barely contained by the eyesight. The beach is one great arc. And then, in contrast, the natural world is insignificant. The sunlit town strewn like petals, its lighthouse a tiny pawn. So the town is just like petals, it's a pawn, and the natural world cannot be contained. So there's this repeated sense of scale throughout the poem. The landscape is characterized as being expansive, as being freeing, an open space to escape into. Its grandeur or its monumental scale puts our lives, the petty concerns that we have, into perspective. And yet the fact that the natural world, the man-made world is small in comparison, again, it's hoping to shift our perspective somewhat. Our lives are insignificant when compared to the scale and nature of the natural world. We also get these prepositional phrases. So beside me, swamp oaks foliage, out on the heath, the guard's carriage, beyond, cloudy, afternoon swells, I turn when far off. So these establish a kind of closeness and connection with nature, which is beside the narrator. The natural world is beside, and there's a distance from the man-made world. It's far away. It's out on the heath. It's beyond. The narrator, is beyond. They're far away from the natural world. So all of these phrases that establish a sense of place, establish a distance from the man-made world and a closeness to the natural world, and that is what leads to those feelings of peacefulness and restoration. And as with a lot of Gray's poems, we get another intertextual reference, this time to Cézanne, the French painter. So Cézanne is famous for his paintings of Mont Sainte-Victoire. And those paintings, which I think he painted, that mountain like 60 times, he was trying to offer his viewers a kind of majestic glimpse at a landscape that was distanced from the township. So the town is just tiny in comparison to the mountain. So Gray is referencing Cézanne and, recalling Cézanne's paintings of Mount Sainte-Victoire, and he's calling upon similar feelings of nature's majesty and beauty, as well as humanity's comparative insignificance. The final idea is that immersion within nature provides individuals with opportunities for spiritual nourishment. So again, I'll talk about form a little bit here. In contrast to something like Journey to the North Coast, we have short stanzas. Stanza breaks. It's a pretty they're consistent lines, stanza lines. But the short stanzas slow pace and focus the reader on the images of the natural world. And that kind of slowness of pace matches the narrator's meditative state of mind. So the form is enforcing or reinforcing the idea of slowing down, the idea of focusing on the natural world, meditating on it, finding relaxation in it. That's what the form is doing. It's slowing the reader down to match the narrator's state of mind. And hopefully it has the same effect on us for Gray. Of course, we've got the motif of light. It comes up in all of Gray's poems, and light is symbolic of spiritual enlightenment or higher knowledge. And we've got the light that the sunlit town strewn like petals and the sun brings because it's perfect warmth. That last image there, the sun, its perfect warmth, is probably a significant one there too, right? The idea that the sun bestows, or the light, relaxed within nature, he feels bathed within light. He feels this sense of enlightenment. He feels this sense of elation of, getting some sort of higher knowledge. So that simile at the end is important. The sun brings the feeling that I wear great wings while stepping along the earth. I think there are two ways that we can interpret this simile at the end. You can think of it that he feels like he is a bird, a part of the natural world. He feels liberated and free. We have those associations with birds, that they have that sense of freedom. Gray references the train fleeing like a bird's. There's that sense of freedom again. So it could be that he becomes a part of the natural world. He feels that he is part of that divine order. Or we could alternately alternately interpret it as him feeling like an angel, part of God's divine order, or a spiritual kind of feeling, that he feels transcendent, that he escapes the petty concerns of the mortal realm of modernity, and he feels instead like he's something completely different, something elevated and transcendent. So that's my very quick summary revision of Byron Bay Winter. There's plenty more to talk about with that poem, so if you've got notes on things that I haven't mentioned here, it doesn't mean that they're not valid, but these are just the ideas and the analysis that sticks out to me when I'm looking at that poem. Thanks.